So hopefully you can see the screen with the first slide. We had a little dry run earlier, so that's good. So yeah, let me just introduce myself. I see the screen. I'm Nigel. First slide. We had a little dry run earlier, so I'm getting some feedback here.
No worry. It's
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. My name's Nigel Blair, and I used to work for Minnie Lou when she was working at Petrofac, an engineering company based in Woking, and I've known Minnie for probably 10 plus years. Is it, Minnie? Goes back for quite a while. So I've been involved with known Minnie for quite a while, and it was Minnie that sort of asked me to come and present about the EIKON Charity. It's, as you can see, it's a charity that enables young people to thrive. It's a charity that I've personally been involved with for over 20 years and in various capacities. I started just over 20 years ago, and I was asked to join the board of trustees from the chief executive officer of the charity at the time. It's a very small charity then, and it basically just had one youth worker. And I joined the board of trustees back then, and with a view to sort of helping run the charity. And over the sort of intervening 20 odd years, I became the chair of trustees, and I was in that role for maybe 15 years. And then down in around 2014, I stepped down from the chair of trustees role, basically because the charity had grown so much that the time demanded of me was I wasn't able to sort of contribute sufficient time, really. And also, as having been the chair of trustees for 15 years, all organisations need fresh blood and new views and different people sort of in leadership roles. So I thought it was an opportune time for me to step down. But I didn't actually leave the charity completely. I continued as a trustee for until actual last year, and it was last year that I stepped down from the actual board. I still involved with the charity by sort of doing things such as this, being an ambassador and promoting the work of the charity. Just to put it in perspective, when I joined the charity, it had a sort of annual turnover of about £50,000 a year. And I just looked up on the Charity Commission website this evening or this afternoon, and last year the turnover for the charity was £1.9 million. So it's grown over the 20 years. It's grown significantly, and I understand this coming year it's going to significantly exceed over £2 million worth of turnover. So, what is EIKON all about? Right. So, the EIKON Charity, it's about supporting children and young people in Surrey and the borders, and that extends into sort of southwest London as well, and into Hampshire and sort of the surrounding counties. And its purpose is to, as it says here, is to help young people to overcome difficulties, to become resilient and thrive. The EIKON Charity actually focuses on disadvantaged and vulnerable children and young people who are experiencing significant challenges in their lives, helps with their emotional well-being and their mental health, education, and their relationships. And the big premise of EIKON is that they believe in prevention rather than cure. And where that's not been possible in helping on, it's helping if unable to prevent an issue, but we try, if we're unable to prevent an issue, the charity tries to get on and help it, if there is an issue, to stop it increasing and becoming a crisis. And the sort of the adage of Chris Hickford, who's the CEO of the company, says he feels when he gives a lot of presentations, it's that the ethos is better to put a fence at the top of a cliff than have an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. So the idea is sort of trying to prevent major issues escalating into into major crises. And I haven't got the figure with me, but there's the cost of I think the cost of having a young person go through the criminal justice system a year runs into hundreds of thousands of pounds per young person. And if you can stop young people getting into trouble with the law and that type of thing, it can be very sort of cost effective. But not to mention the issues it has on their long-term life and their lifestyle and their sort of mental well-being. So why do we do it? There's a few statistics here. Less than 1 in 3 children with a diagnosis of mental disorder get access to the NHS. It's quite interesting. One of the I'll quote Chris quite a lot, but one of the other statistics, he said that there's a situation a number of years ago when a young girl who was threatening to commit suicide. He sort of approached the local authorities and said, we've got this young lady who's teenage lady who's threatening to commit suicide. We need to get specialist help for them. And the answer he got back was, well, how many times has she committed suicide, attempted? He said, well, it's only once. And I said, well, we can't step in until she's attempted suicide at least 3 times. And that was really shocking, that sort of the statutory authorities, the threshold for their intervention is so high that just because of cutbacks, etc., that situations can have to get so far down the line with young people that before sort of the authorities can step in. 10% of young people deliberately harm themselves regularly, and that's sort of self-harming, and that's increasing. 75% of long-lasting mental health issues starts before the age of 24. That's quite an interesting statistic. A lot of mental health that people are suffering in adolescence or in later years in life, it can a significantly proportion stems from a young age. And suicide is the leading cause for the death of young people between the age of 5 to 19. So that's a shocking statistics as well. Early intervention is vital to improve mental health and prevent further disadvantages for young people, such as bullying and isolation and problems at school. So with good mental health, children and young people do better in every way. They do better at school educationally, they do better in relation with their parents, they do have better job prospects, and they can hold down relationships, more meaningful relationships. So that's something EIKON strive to do, is to help young people improve their mental attitudes and their health, to help them understand and develop their own self-worth, their importance, and their own sort of just mental well-being. So these are just some of the causes of difficulties that young people experience. And a lot of people sort of say, well, in Surrey and London, it's quite well, particularly Surrey, it's a very affluent county with why should there be why should young people have problems in Surrey when they've generally the standard of living is so high? But income isn't a panacea for well-being. Often it can exacerbate the issues. And it's put here as well that divorce, or breakups of family structure, Surrey has the highest divorce rate outside of Greater London, and the impact that family breakdown has on children is immense, and quite often it doesn't materialize until sort of sometime a number of years after the event. And obviously there is increasing divorce rates, but and it's unfortunately it's something that happens, but it's how things are handled as well. And if young people can understand that it's not their fault, it's nothing to do with them that's caused the divorce, and if they can get some coaching, some help, it can help them with their coming to terms with these difficult issues. Absent fathers. 28% of children lose touch with their father 3 years after separation. So that's a worrying statistic, that sort of lots of young people lose their sort of a male dominant figure in their family, and lose that influence of a father after a divorce, and having no contact with a father can have a significant impact on a child or a young person's mental health, feeling that they're sort of, what have they done wrong? Why doesn't my father want to speak with me, etc. So that can have a significant impact on their mental health. Alcohol problems amongst parents. 7 out of the 11 Surrey boroughs throughout Surrey, top 10 for hazardous drinking in the UK. And I'm sure there's a number of the boroughs in London as well. Alcohol abuse is a big issue, and the impact that has on families and children and their well-being is massive. Abuse and neglect. Over 1,000 young people are in care or with a protection plan in Surrey over suffering from abuse or neglect. So that's whether they've been physically abused, sexually abused, or mentally abused, or neglected, and that's such an issue with young people, and often they feel they blame themselves for a lot of these issues as well. That they feel it's their problem, that things that they've done that have caused their parents or their family members or their carers to sort of abuse them or neglect them. Domestic violence. So it's over 35,000 victims in Surrey, with 3,300 children living in homes where there is a domestic abuse problem. So it's been talked about, domestic violence has increased, and over the lockdown period with the sort of isolation and the issues that have been brought about because of people being shut at home, and issues in family life that have been the pressures and strains and the stresses that are put on people's relationships, and that's comes out, and sometimes as increasing the domestic violence, and it's young people that often suffer with that. I'm not sure if anybody saw the Ian Wright documentary the other few days ago or last week on television about the ex-footballer who suffered significant domestic mental issues because of the abusive father he had, and the way his father would beat his mother up, and that how that has in fact affected him. And he's only recently, he's a guy who's probably similar age to me, in his mid-50s, that's only recently been able to sort of explain this and come out and be open about it and seek proper help for it. And that's like quite often the case that I mentioned earlier, that a lot of issues that affect young people in their early years and informative years can go on and have a significant impact on their lives in later years. Poverty. Surrey has 14 communities within the lowest third of the deprived areas in the UK. Again, I sort of mentioned earlier about the issues of people looking at EIKON work in Surrey and thinking, why do they need to work in Surrey? But there are pockets of significant deprivation in Surrey, and although I mentioned that sort of wealth doesn't necessarily is a panacea for sort of well-being, often poverty has an impact on sort of young people's ability and their livelihoods, and more pressures at home, etc. And quite a lot of young people these days are acting as carers as well, and when they're having to look after their parents or other siblings, where sometimes both parents are having to work to make ends meet. Some of the onus falls on some of the older children of the family to sort of look after their younger siblings, or even caring for their parents themselves. So these are some of the sort of the causes of issues that young people are having to deal with in Surrey, and I say that the borders around. So the impact of COVID-19. So it's impacted everybody a lot without question. But before the pandemic, it says here 1 in 9 children and young people had a probable mental health disorder, such as depression, anxiety, or an eating disorder. And by 2020, after the lockdown, first lockdown, it's 1 in 6. I'm not sure what the figures are now, but I'm sure it hasn't gone down significantly, and more unlikely has it increased. In a study carried out in August 2020, 41% of young people agree that their mental health was much worse, and 40% agree that their mental health was a bit worse since the pandemic began. So the pandemic has had impact on young people. And I know from some friends who've got teenage children as well, that one of the things that teenage children love to do is mix with their friends and go out, and that's where they get a lot of their stimulus, and they're sort of been able to part of their growing up and reaching out. And COVID impacts on that has significant impact on them, and the way they like to meet and share with their friends. So that's had an impact on their mental health as well. So how do we help, as in EIKON? What do we do? What does EIKON do? So in schools, EIKON provides youth specialists placed in schools to work with young people. They do one-to-one sort of coaching discussions, helping them in groups and in lunch clubs. And our whole school wellbeing resources are used in 89% of Surrey secondary schools, and also in surrounding areas as well, in Hampshire and in southwest London. And this is a resource which is provided to the school, and the teachers within the school are able to use this resource to help them to sort of identify issues with young people with mental health, and to help them come to terms with some of the issues. So that's sort of specialist use placed in schools. In the community, we have youth workers supporting young people in a face-to-face and online, especially over the last year or so, providing online safe spaces for them to relate and debate and create. Just stepping back to the on schools, what I should have mentioned is that quite often young people feel they can't open up to teachers at school themselves because of the issues of that they have in potential problems with bullying, say, or issues with the teachers even, maybe. And similarly with their parents, it's sometimes young people find it hard to sort of speak to their parents about issues they have. And EIKON's youth specialists are independent. They're independent of the school. They work with the school, but they're independent, so they're not necessarily seen as part of the sort of the authority part of the school. And same with families and parents. Although obviously there are particular rules and regulations that we have to work. EIKON has to work with regard to disclosure, etc. We can offer, where we can, is an independent and secure place for young people to come and share their issues and problems. Talked about community, and in collaboration, EIKON work together with others. We've worked with CAMS, with children, adolescent mental health resources. That's with the NHS, supporting them to improve physical and emotional well-being and mental health of children and young people across Surrey and beyond. And that works with sort of, we get young people referred to us through GPs, through hospital work, where they feel that having a A specialist person will sit alongside and help support young people to mentor them, or will help them in some of the mental health issues they have. Right, I've got now, rather than listen to me talk for incessantly, I've got a video, so hopefully, well, the technology worked earlier, so hopefully you'll be able to see this. Please shout if you can't see the video or you don't hear the audio. Here goes. Have a thumbs up if you see.
So on March the 5th, 2005, my mum was pregnant. She'd gone into hospital to give birth to my brother, and the next day my mum had come home with my dad and an empty baby seat. This was the first kind of death that I had to deal with in my family that really affected me. I didn't understand what it was at the time. I found it really difficult to try and piece it together and understand what it was, but I also had no support. So from the end of year 6 to the start of year 7, I was bullied quite a lot. I remember a group of girls all sitting around me, calling me names, not letting me leave. That wasn't the nicest of experiences to go through, because I always felt like I was an outsider, but I didn't know how. I did have friends, but I felt like they weren't really my friends. Around that time I was kind of questioning what my purpose was and why people didn't want to be nice to me when I was nice to everyone else. But instead of taking that out on everyone else, I took that out on myself. I started self-harming.
EIKON started 25 years ago now, and we set up because there were so many young people that needed help, but often didn't get that help until their lives turned into a crisis.
I got involved with the wrong people because I thought these were people that cared about me. I started using drugs, and these drugs, I thought they were making me feel better, but they weren't, because these drugs made me feel this out-of-body experience, and as soon as I was on a come down, I just wanted to kill myself, to put it frankly. I spent a lot of nights in hospital with attempted suicide attempts and just not wanting to be here anymore.
We see so many young people who have wanted help but haven't received it for months, sometimes years down the line. It makes no sense to wait that time. Those young people suffer, their problems get worse, so the depths of despair that they reach is much harder to get them out of. It's more expensive, so for all of those reasons, it is better to get involved in prevention. EIKON offers a whole variety of services. We do a lot of work in schools. That's where young people are every day. So we put youth workers in there, they have their offices, and young people can just come and knock on the door and say, I need some help today. We're also part of the CAM service, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service in Surrey. We run youth clubs, wherever we can get access to young people, and our job is to journey with them day in, day out, until they feel able to move on and face life with less interventions from us.
So now, where am I now? I've got a 2.5-year-old. She is perfect. She has got the most bubbly personality. On March the 1st last year, I met my new partner, Matt. Again, he does make me so happy. He looks after Isla like she's his own child. But yeah, that's my story, and I can't thank EIKON enough for everything they've done, every course they've put me on, every one-to-one session I've had, every time they've come and spoken to me when they didn't have to speak to me but carried on pushing. And without them, I really don't think I'd be where I am today or who I am today. And I honestly don't think I would have even been here today if it wasn't for them.
I'm glad you're getting the chance to meet Chloe today. She's an amazing young person. She started life in difficult circumstances and has had things happen to her a number of times at different points in her life. But she's overcome them. With the help that we and others that have been able to provide, she has overcome them and she's now thriving. She's a determined, strong, resilient, fantastic young woman. And we are very, very proud of all that she has achieved.
Okay. Hope you found that interesting and informative. And as I say, it wasn't me speaking, so it's probably much better. Right. How can you help? So if the story or any of the issues in EIKON have sort of touched you and sort of feel that you sort of potentially sort of caused you to think, yeah, I'd like, that's something that I could feel that I could aspire to helping out and assisting this charity, it'd be fantastic. It says here, if your running club is up for a team challenge, EIKON has places in various mass participation excuse me, I'll put my teeth back in, various mass participation events, so it's hard to say this time of night, this year. So including, I'm not sure, the Mercer Surrey Half Marathon, the London Marathon. Unfortunately, that just recently all the tickets for that had been taken. So I think we get a number of golden tickets each year for the London Marathon. So possibly bear that in mind for coming years. The virtual London Marathon, which is on the 3rd of October. So there, if any of these of interest to you, there is the EIKON website, and if you just sort of Google search on EIKON Charity, you'll come up with the charity webpage, and there's a part on there called page on there called challenge events, and there's various challenge events there. For two we mentioned with the Mercer Surrey Half Marathon. I think that's based around Woking and the Guildford area. So it's expertly organised by AAT events, set in the countryside and villages around Woking. So that's something your club would be interested in joining and supporting. That would be fantastic. There's the virtual marathon, again, which is happening later in the year. And there's various other challenges and hikes that are happening. So that's sort of something specific for the running club. So that's that, and there's potentially the sort of donations as well. So if that's something you don't want to join in, if you feel challenged that you want to help support the charity in a specific financial way, there's links here on the website. So that's the end of my formal presentation about EIKON. One thing I did forget to mention actually was that back in 2016, I was actually honoured by being awarded an MBE for my services to EIKON and the charity. So I've just got a couple of pictures here. I don't know if you of any of interest, but it's just I spent a morning with the Queen getting an MBE, and I was quite fortunate because there are over 37 investitures each year where honours are given out, and the duties are shared between various members of the royal family. the Queen herself, Prince Charles, Princess Anne, some of the other princes. But I was very fortunate enough to have the Queen herself. So I was able to spend sort of probably half a minute chatting to the Queen, getting awarded the MBE for my services to the EIKON Charity. So that's my claim to fame.
What is stand for MBE?
MBE is Member of the British Empire. So it's there are various categories. You can become, the highest award I think is become a Sir, a Knight. And so I haven't quite got there yet, and I don't think I'll ever will aspire to becoming a knight, although Minnie and my other colleagues at work often call me Sir Nigel. And there's OBE, which is Order of the British Empire, which is another award. So I can flick through a couple of slides if you want. So that's and our investiture was actually at Windsor Castle. So I don't know if you over the last month or so you saw the funeral of Prince Philip that was held in and around the castle. So we were fortunate enough to be able to go to the castle. That's my wife and my two daughters, and I was awarded an MBE by the Queen. There's a couple of, and then she shakes your hand, and then you have to leave for the next person to come along and receive their award. So you get about 30 seconds chatting to her, and that's about it. And that's the medal there. So I knew nothing about the award. You can't apply for it yourself. You have to be nominated, and it goes through quite a thorough process where you have to get people supporting you, and referees support an application for you, and it goes through, and then you're kept in strict secrecy, that you're not allowed to divulge it to anybody until the official announcement is either made, because there are two announcements made each year, one on the Queen's birthday in June, and then one in the New Year's honours list. So you've probably heard the New Year's honours list and the Queen's birthday honours list. So there's two lists that come out each year, are published, and they have names of various people that have been awarded the various honours. And then throughout the year, the honours are actually provided by, as I say, at the investitures. So yeah, that's the picture of the medal there, and that's the green grass where if you recall a couple of weeks ago, that's where all the bands were playing the music for the funeral. Yeah, then I just wanted to talk about a few slides about EIKON. So I'm not sure if that ends my formal presentation. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions they would like to ask, or I'll do my best to answer them. So I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, Nigel. That is really very informative. I think that there's one question in the chat box saying that, what did the Queen say to you?
What did the Queen say to me? It's quite, as you can imagine, it's very, very organized down to the last basic 10 seconds, and you have you arrive about two or 3 hours before the actual presentation, and you get taken into a different room, and you're grilled and told exactly what's going to happen, and I've never had my name ticked off so many lists in my life. Every door you walk through, there's an official gentleman standing there in a uniform with a list and asking your name. But actually, you get, as I say, you get about 40 seconds with the Queen, and she has there's an aide right next to her, and as you're walking up, he obviously says a few words about you and into her ear to give her an idea of what you're there for. And so as you approach her, you're told to take 3 steps forward and then bow, but nod your head, and then she'll acknowledge you. And then she will start the conversation by, obviously from the information she's provided. So she was asking me about the charity, how I got involved, things that I felt were important to me. And what came across to me was amazing. She was 90. It was her 90th year that year. It was her 90th birthday that year. She was 90, and she stood there for 45 minutes, and she spoke to over 70 people. And you felt when she was speaking to you that she actually was so interested in what you were saying. She had that ability to sort of feel that you were really special, and that what you had done and the award that she was giving you meant a lot to her as well as it did you. And I just found that amazing, really. So
that's nice. Good. Yijo, is there everyone can just open their mind to ask question directly?
I think the Fang will have a question. She raised
Yeah,
hand.
I had a question. I'm listening to all your slides, and it's fascinating. As a mum, I've got 2 kids. They're in primary school.
okay.
And I don't think they've got any problem. But as a mum, I'm so concerned about hearing all this. Back in China recently, there are reports of suicides made by young children who have never shown any sign of difficulty or concern or just despair in life.
Yeah.
And all in a sudden, on the Mother's Day, in the Chinese version, on the Mother's Day, they say goodbye to their mom at the school gate. And then the next thing they saw, or the parents knew, were they've jumped off from the 5th roof of ever. It's and it's not the only one. It keeps coming.
Yeah.
So as a parent, I get scared and think, what the hell can I do, or what early signs can I spot, or what could I miss?
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I'm worried about is the internet, and luckily enough, our upstairs is internet free, because we've got this little things in life you never thought would be helpful. We've got this what do you call it? Oh, underfloor heating. So we can't get Wi-Fi upstairs. And when we moved into the house, we were thinking, oh, that's really inconvenient. And nowadays, I think that's bloody brilliant.
It's acting as a Faraday cage.
Never hide in their bedroom, searching on the internet for things that they're not supposed to be seeing, or people they shouldn't be chatting to. And I feel awful sometimes as a mom. I tell them the most bloody real life horrors. For example, people get onto the internet and they come into the dark webs and without knowing, and talk to people who would trick them into further harm without them knowing. So all these kind of things. So are there things we can spot? They're in school all day. We don't know who they are talking to. We don't know who they're with. I've got too many things to say, but you get what I mean.
I know what you're saying. Unfortunately, I'm not a trained worker or counsellor myself, so unfortunately I'm an engineer. So, but
I missed the earlier part.
Yeah,
so what's your role in the charity?
I was a trustee of the charity, so I helped sort of organise and run it. So I haven't sort of had any formal youth training, although I have run youth clubs and worked with young people, but I've got no formal qualifications. But I know what you're saying, and quite often people say, "Oh, why?" When I was that child's age, such and such, and a comment we often say is that you were never that child's age. Children these days are living through pressures and circumstances that me and my age never had to deal with. And
I agree.
And when I was at school, I was bullied. I could have been bullied, but that stopped at the school gate. Whereas now with social media and things like that, bullying can be 24/7. They can't. Young people can't get away from it. Whereas back in our day, We didn't have social media, etc. So some of the pressures and issues that young people and children have got to deal with these days, we have got no comprehension about. To your specific question, I'm sure there's I can potentially find some or get somebody to find some resources for you. But one of the things I would say is I've got two daughters. They're both, one's 30 now and the other one's 28. But one of the
You
things...
don't look it.
Oh, thank you.
That's brilliant. Oh gosh, okay.
But
Go on.
It's I as they slightly grew older, with a father, they didn't have such a close relationship with me as they had a much closer relationship with my mother. Sorry, my mother, my wife,
Their mum,
and their mum. And it was something Bren, my wife's always said to them, and instilled with them, said, you can tell me anything, whatever you say, whatever you want, whatever you think it's bad
That's
or whatever.
what I tell my children. That's good.
You can tell me anything, and I may be cross, but it won't be as bad as if you don't tell me. Just be open and tell me anything, and that's something
that's true.
Is very
so true.
good. And even now, they're 30 and 28, they still have issues, and they're still on their phone to their mum asking them, what do you think about this, and everything. So trying to be there for them, and be and try not to show them that you will judge them necessarily.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's what I do, but I don't realize that's a key thing. I do now. Yeah.
Right.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
There's something out, not related to the charity, but the church I go to. We're just about to be putting on some in September, some online parenting courses for two age ranges. One's for sort of primary age children, another one's for teenage children, and it's not sort of religious at all. It's all about sort of from videos and information provided for a organization called Care for the Family, and it's all about sort of parenting and giving tips and ideas of how to parent young people and children, because it's something you only get one go at it, don't you? You can't
get second chance.
Sort of go back and second chance, and it's something that we often look at our parents, and I had a fantastic upbringing, and I was really fortunate with my parents, but you still look back and look at your own parents, and you think, well, yeah, they could have done better in that respect, and there's things where you can always improve on. And I look back at how I've parented my daughters at times, and I think that's something I could have improved upon, and why couldn't I have seen that resource when earlier on, sort of thing. And it's really
you can
really
never
helpful.
Be perfect.
That's right.
No, you can always improve. And is that something your charity is also working on, to tackle from the parenting side, to work as a perfect prevention tool?
Yeah, we have looked to put on parenting courses in the past. To be honest with you, unfortunately, generally it is parents that are doing a very good job that come to the courses. It's very hard to get parents. Often children that are suffering big issues are due to parents who aren't particularly attentive and are interested in their children, and so they don't necessarily want to come along to a parenting course.
Sure.
Whereas you find that sort of people like yourselves that are really interested and want to improve their parenting, they come along, which is great, but it's often hard to sort of reach the sort of really needy people that need.
It's kind of natural, isn't it? If you as a parent work really hard and then your children still get it, and the ones who don't care about their kids don't get it, that's not fair.
Yeah, that's right. But unfortunately, that's the situation, how it is at times. But no, we do try to work with parents as well, and assist, helping, giving them ideas and tools to where they can try and help their their children. Another issue, something, a very successful thing we've done is helping children transition from primary school into secondary school. Quite often that's can be a very daunting task for sort of year 6 children that are the big fish in the small pond going to be the little fish in a big sea. Taking that step into that, and quite often sometimes in the feeder schools of the primary feeder schools into the secondary schools in which we work, we sort of the heads and the year 6 teachers maybe identify a number of their children that they think might find that transition into secondary school would be difficult, and we work with those young people, those children in their final term of primary school and then into the secondary school as well, to try to help them come to terms with that transition.
Okay, yeah, that's important. My son is doing 11 plus.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
he is going to be a big fish in a small pond going into a big sea as
That's
a little
right.
fish.
As a little fish, yeah.
I'm trying to encourage him to go with his friends who are academic nerds, basically.
Right.
And I incentivize him by saying, oh, you can go together on a bus if you get into that as so and so.
Right.
Who probably will get it. Okay, well, there are just so many things that you can do. But I think, as you said, parents who try to improve and look out for this usually end up with okay kids. So
Yeah. But unfortunately, it's not necessarily a panacea.
It's not guaranteed.
They have their own lives, but obviously you need to give them the best opportunities that they can. But certain things you mentioned about sort of issues is if their mood changes or dietary things change in them, and trying to understand, they might not know that themselves, but just as a parent you can ask questions and try to sort of find out if they're having issues with friends or anything that might be causing them upset. And
absolutely right. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, Nigel, we got a question for Kenny. Kenny, do you want to switch on?
I think Nigel, he in the question to Fang, he already answered, isn't it? He said the parents want to join the course, then normally it's for more needed parents, children. I got it. Thank you.
And I can see that Xiaomei Zhang has raised her hand.
Hello. I actually just have one comment about earlier. Just discuss that something can prevent mental health issues, or scientific experiments proved that positive psychology can help prevent mental health issues, and the impact is huge. So it has I know there's a father of positive psychology in America who is called Martin Seligman, and he's the father of positive psychology. This has been applied in about I couldn't remember the exact number in the British school, UK school, and also it proved that positive psychology or positive education has improved both the children's or the students' mental health and their study and their marks improved both. So it's a very big how to say, just so
that's big influence, definitely.
Big influence, yes, definitely. Thank you. It is your charity is also doing something related to this about positive psychology or positive education.
I'm not sure if they term it specifically like that, but they tend to term it more in sort of self-esteem and your sort of self-belief in yourself and your views. They quite often, young people, we've talked about social media today already, but quite often in Western society and probably in sort of Chinese society as well now is that people are comparing themselves so much to these idols of these sort of perfect
Yeah.
people with perfect bodies, perfect mental health. You've got to be a star at this. You've got to be able to have a fantastic figure, and men have fantastic torsos and things.
Yeah.
And it's people, young people under this sort of stress and issues that they need to sort of conform to this idea, these ideals, which are sort of basically sort of photoshopped people and which don't exist anyway. And it's trying to sort of build young people's self-image, and they have a positive attitude towards themselves, that try to encourage them to have they don't to say to them that they don't have to look like this to be valued, that you'll have a positive attitude of your own yourself. So that sort of thing that they work on to try to sort of promote sort of self-belief and improve a self-esteem, that everybody's important and that everybody has a contribution. Yeah,
sure. I believe it's maybe even harder for children, they are easily to be affected by the opinions on the internet.
Yeah.
So actually, I found that positive psychology also I think can help, because it's like there's a way you can learn, you can practice to be optimistic, to be positive. So this way can be measured. So this can, so I think this just is something a scientific way to improve mental health.
Yeah, no, for sure. And quite often it's a lot of the issues that sort of particularly young ladies have and teenage girls, is sort of eating disorders, having to try to lose weight and that. And you hear about read about girls EIKON's come across young girls that have sort of eating ice cubes and cotton wool to just to try to sort of urge to conform to and have better bodies and things, and the pressures on them to conform and to sort of have that self-image portrayed by sort of the media and society is so damning and hard. But if they can sort of understand that that's not the main thing, it's sort of, they've got to look inside themselves and their own as you say, the self-worth, and have a positive view on things, that they can contribute and have an impact on people around them. And that's the important thing. But it's very hard for young people to get that across to young people, because they just love to conform and be similar to their peers and want to do what everybody else is doing. They don't like to stand out differently. Great, some really good questions.
Thank you. I think
nice to speak to you, Nigel.
Okay.
Yizhou has got a question.
Before I have a question, but before my question, I think Mei Huang maybe have a question.
Okay. Hi. Hello, Nigel.
Hi, May.
For your presentation, and congratulations on your MBE.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. I do have 3 questions. Yeah. First of all, I need some clarifications about the charity's operational module. It's a kind of business module. So is it be copyable? For example, you set up this charity in Surrey. Can it be copyable in the other cities? And this is the first question. And second question, what's your main obstacles and difficulties of the long-term development for your charity? And the third question is about the measurement. So in terms of the a charity which is supporting the young people, how you just measure the social impact?
Yeah.
It's not a very concrete statistics, but how could you present your social impact to build up the awareness in the society? Yeah, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Finally, great questions. Where shall I begin?
So first of all, is the operational model.
Operation model, yes. Whether it can be copied, yeah. We definitely, it's something that we can, and the model can be replicated in other parts of the country. We are, to say, we're looking. We've originally, when we very first started, it wasn't called the EIKON Charity. It was called the New Haw Youth Project, and it was basically centered around a small village in Surrey called New Haw. And after it started to grow, we were expanding and reaching young people further away from this village, and so we were rebranded to EIKON. So we've been working in Surrey and borders terms there, so we link into southwest London and also sort of Hampshire and some of the surrounding counties. So we have no sort of issues with growing, but the big thing for the model is that whenever we expand, we want that to be sustainable.
Yeah.
That it needs to be evolutionary, probably, of growth and sustainable, and be able to sort of continue. And you said one of the biggest obstacles, and that's linked to sort of the one of the biggest obstacles for us is long-term funding. Quite often we get a lot of funding from councils and local authorities, and unfortunately their budgets may only last for 1 year or 2 years, and then you have to reapply. And sometimes we've had contracts with councils and county councils, Surrey County Council, for instance, and find that because of budgetary cuts from the the government, that they have to cut their youth services budgets for the next year, and so issues get impacts how they can support charities like EIKON. So what we've recently, over the last couple of years, we've done more work with the National Health Authority and CAMS, the Children Adolescent Mental Health System, and where we have very fortunately we've managed to win some contracts through them, which are 5-year term contracts, which have give us significantly more stability for the coming years, with a view to being able to sort of plan and grow and develop. So one of the biggest obstacles for us as a charity, and I'm sure with a majority of charities, is sustainable income. Obviously, we do a lot of fundraising events. We try to sort of have significant incomes from a number of streams coming in, from sort of fundraising, from contracts and all, and with local authorities, from major donors, and from industry, corporate put, if we can. So we try to sort of gain a broad income, but one of the issues we have come across in the past, as I said, is the short-term nature of some of the contracts you do get with the local authorities, and it can cause major problems that you're offering a service to a young person. And often it can take a number of months. And some of the young people, like Chloe, you saw tonight on the video, we've worked with her, I think, for a number of years. And funding, sometimes if your funding is cut and the workers you have to sort of make some of the workers redundant, you often lose that continuity with young people, and that can be devastating to them. And your last question was about social impact and measurement of social impact. Yes, that's a very good question, because that's something that a lot of funders ask us as well, is how do we know what impact our services are having? and we've got a particular measurement tool called Social Impact Tracker, where we try to measure the impact that our services are having on particularly young people. And so when our specialist youth workers and youth providers start with a young person, there's a sort of questionnaire that goes through how they feel amongst themselves in their mental attitude and etc. And then throughout the intervention with that young person, it's maybe sort of one or two or three times that sort of same questionnaire is asked of them to see whether things have improved. Do they feel better at this in certain situations and certain circumstances to where they were before? And then at the end of when they've finished the course or whatever that particular intervention has, how long that's lasted, and look at the outcome, and then through that we can sort of measure to some extent how we feel that young person has been impacted by the services. So as you say, it's can be a very subjective measurement. It's not like we're sort of making widgets and we can count the number of widgets that are produced. It's you need to sort of measure where you can, and over a number of if you're doing this with a number of tens or hundreds of young people, you can sort of statistically show particular measurements, and we show that to our funders when we apply for grants and funds.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your sort of incisive questions. Put me on the spot there.
So May always ask very good questions.
Yes, Minnie didn't tell me about that.
May is having her own education company, so she's
running a startup company on the education consultancies, and
I see.
I'm currently experiencing lots of questions or difficulties on the children's education. So what you have done actually inspired me. Yeah.
Great.
But I'm aware that you always mention Surrey. So it might not. That's why I need to ask whether your charity could be copyable, to the other cities. Otherwise, the people may not think it's relevant to my communities.
No, I can. It's the problems with young people are worldwide, let alone Surrey-wide, and it's just due to sort of some of the sort of some of our sort of ability to sort of reach something that sort of is it's if you can call it the market. I don't like to use that term at all, but the actual the need is so great that we can't fulfill the need. If in business, if you were able to have a sort of a need or a market where it is unfulfillable, it'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? But unfortunately, this is it works the opposite with us. It's unfortunately sort of the need for the young people and the issues they have is so great and ever growing, and we're never able to fulfill it, but we sort of do the best we can.
Yeah, it depends on the funding and also depends on the numbers of social workers.
Yes, and funding has been cut significantly over the recent years. But one good thing is that over the recent years, the issue of mental health has been sort of publicized far more, and people are far more aware of mental health now and the issues that mental health can have, and companies and society is much more open to mental health issues and problems of that cause mental health. But as I said, the whole ethos for EIKON is prevention, really. Try to sort of identify issues before they escalate and need serious intervention from the.
Can I check with you? Are you a part-time? I mean, this charity is your part-time job, or
no?
Fully.
I'm fully fully voluntary, yes.
Okay.
And as I sort of said earlier, when I stepped down from the chair of trustees role about 5 years ago because the charity has grown to such an extent that I wasn't able to offer enough spare time. I couldn't. The demands of my time was so much that I couldn't fulfill what was needed really.
Okay.
So I stepped down from the chair role, and a recently retired lady took over as the chair of trustees, and she was able to commit 2 days a week, and I was able to commit 2 evenings a week. So the difference that she could bring was fantastic, and having a new face was great for the organisation as well.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. I have a question. Actually, I have quite a lot of questions. I have to say the Mercer Half Marathon. I ran the Mercer Half Marathon before.
You have?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's a great half marathon. It's in the countryside. The view is wonderful.
Right.
Yeah. My question also relate to the EIKON Charity. My question is related how they start from 0 to 1. How they can become the initial maybe idea.
How did it all start?
Yeah, how you can start, how you can go into such a big charity.
Such a big charity. Well, its origin started through a church youth club, where a Saturday night youth club was put on for young people in the New Hore area of Surrey, which is close to Woking. And through that youth club, Chris Hickford, the guy who you saw on the video, he was running that youth club, and this is a story he often tells. He said during that evening he noticed a young boy who was not his normal self. So Chris took it to one side and said, "Well, what's the matter?" I'm not sure the guy's name. He said, "What's the matter?" Call him John, for instance. "What's the matter, John? You don't seem to be yourself." And this guy opened up and said that the previous week he'd come home from school expecting to see his father. He wasn't in the house, and he noticed that the back door was unlocked, and he went out into the garage and found his father hanging from a noose. His father had committed suicide and hung himself, and this lad who was 14 had to try to take his father down from the noose. And he's had these, and Chris said, "Right, what help have you had?" And this guy said, "I haven't had any help at all." And so Chris tried to contact the local social services to try and get some intervention to help this young person. And unfortunately, there's nobody available, and nobody was able to provide support for this young lad, who just had to sort of come to terms with this issue. And that's really challenged Chris as to sort of the issues that some of the young people have. There's until their certain criteria are met, local social services can't actually sort of intervene. They have no ability or no funding or authority. And Chris thought this wasn't right, so he set about starting this a charity to help young people in this position. And he started the charity, and he started part-time himself as a part-time youth worker in a school. And from that, it started to grow, and it got support from local people, and in the immediate vicinity. In the school itself was started to see the impact and help, and some of the Chris's wages were part funded by the school as well. And over time it developed, and another school locally found out that the work that was happening and thought it was great, and so a second youth worker was brought on. And so from there, basically it's started growing over the years, and basically by word of mouth and by publicizing the work. As I say, that the need is there in every school for young people to be supported. And so over the years, we've sort of grown in various manners. We used to run 27 youth clubs for Surrey County Council around the county, but due to sort of funding cuts, there's very few youth clubs are now actually funded by the county council, so a lot of those are shut down. But we have a bus, a minibus, large minibus that sometimes drives around the locales where young people hang out, and they are able to sort of so youth workers will sort of meet with young people out on the street, sort of thing, and various things. So we've grown. As I said to sort of May earlier, it was sort of, we've tried to sort of wanted to grow sustainably and step by step. And one of the things that we've found very important was that the board of trustees and the governance of the charity, we found it very important that we put, before growing too much, that we put in place right management structures and support structures for the charity before it grew too quickly, so that we were able to sort of manage the charity as it grew. So we've sort of, in the early days, a lot of the trustees were sort of just friends and relatives and acquaintances of Chris, who sort of had a passion for the charity, weren't necessarily extremely well qualified in business or running charities. But as the charity's grown, so the quality of the board of trustees has grown as well, and we now have a very strong board of trustees with a lot of specialist capabilities that can sort of bring to bear on the charity, in the running of the charity. But as a trustee of a charity with over £1 million turnover, there's quite a bit of responsibilities that are there. So you need to have people in place that are able to sort of make those judgment calls when needed to, and can stand up and be counted, as it were.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that sustainability is very important. I was curious about, I guess quite a lot of the people are volunteer workers for the charity. How about the turnover rate? Are they very high turnover rate or?
Turnover rate. I can't give you any figures. I don't think that's one of the measurements we used to measure as part of our trustees reviews, and obviously I haven't been on board for recently, but we used to measure sort of staff turnover as a measure of the charities running, and I knew back then, and I'm sure it's the case now, that we were sort of well within normal turnover rates for staff. With volunteers, that is something that we are wanting to sort of develop further, our volunteer base. We have an awful lot of volunteers, and we have people, mentors that sort of volunteer mentors that sort of all mentor young people, volunteers that work in some actual face-to-face work with young people as well, but also in help with fundraising, with administration, etc. So a lot of our volunteers have been with us for a number of years. There are some people that come in for a season and through other circumstances will move on, but it is a very, I found it very rewarding to sort of work and contribute, and it can be very rewarding as a volunteer in organizations, not just through this organization. I'm sure in a number of organizations where you can actually participate, and I've found it very rewarding.
Yeah. The reason I asked this question is we have the seminar, we have a talk. One of the presenter, he worked for the Chinese charity.
Okay.
The problem with Chinese charity is there's a law, there's a regulation on how much expense can be paid to your staff. Maybe
Right.
it's 10%, 10% of the revenue can pay into your staff. So the staff work for the charity get a very low pay. So the turnover, the problem is the staff turnover is very high.
Okay.
I'm just curious whether this is a common problem for.
I don't think so. It's not something that we try to, as a board of trustees, we try to attract high quality staff to the charity, and as to do that, we often did salary reviews across the charitable sector, looking at various types of salary ranges that people were offered, and we would want to, and we tried to be in the upper quartile of that to attract good quality workers. And just because you're working for a charity doesn't mean to say that you should have a poor salary. You're not. You should have be rewarded for your skills and your. So there are paid staff within the charity, and then there are also volunteers as well. But again, I think you need to ensure that there is volunteers are respected, and I think volunteering for a charity, people need to understand that they have a responsibility as well. They can't just treat it lightly, that if they volunteer to do something, and I think that's clear. Responsibility of the charity is to outline the requirements of volunteers and what would be expected of them before they sort of sign them up, is to identify the sort of the roles and what's expected of them, because it can be quite costly in time and resources to train volunteers up to be able to offer a service, and especially going through, if you're working with young people and vulnerable people, you need to go through disclosure and auditing them, so there are expenses there to be so there is a responsibility for volunteers. So we have a handbook for volunteers and staff as well, to identify what is expected of them before they sign up to become volunteers, and their roles and their and commitments.
So in terms of the regulation in the UK, there's no restriction on the pay of the charity paying to the staff.
I don't think there's a restriction. There's definitely restrictions on what you can pay trustees, and trustees can't be salaried. They can have expenses, but they need to be obviously properly audited and accredited. But with regard to pay and reward for employees of the charity, I don't think there is a restriction. However, I would caveat that is that in the Charities Commission, who's responsible for overseeing charities, you have to submit annual reports and returns, and you have to disclose the salary ranges for various staff, and potential funders that are potentially funding you as a charity. They look at this very carefully, and if they see that some of the staff salaries are disproportionate potentially to the type of charity, size of charity, they will sort of question that and potentially may impact their funding and their. So it's not a case of that you can pay what you want. I think you need to sort of be open to judgment, and as we did, and I'm sure still do, is undertake sort of salary reviews of peers and equivalent charities to us in the same sort of sector and locality, to see what the salaries are paid to their employees.
Yeah, that been bringing into another interesting question. So, for example, if the charity want to invest for the future.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a loss for the next 2 years, and in order to invest for the future.
Yeah.
For the listed company, it's very easy for people to accept that your own money, you are making a loss, making for the future. But for the charity, you are making a loss for the people that donate the money. It's hard, I find that sometimes it's very hard to justify. For example, I see that if you want to do marketing, I see your EIKON Charity has do the advert in the Google. I see the Google, I put in the charity. I see your advert as well. So it's kind of the investment, but you can't guarantee the return. How do you see this problem in this charity?
Again, there's guidance from Charities Commission as well, and again, funders will look at the annual accounts of a charity and look to see how much expenditure goes on fundraising. So if you spend sort of 80 pence for every pound that you raise in fundraising, you're only getting a very small return. And they're sort of some of the measurements that charities commissions will look at, and also potential funders as well, with regard to how much for income, how much you spend on fundraising activities. And there are a number of indices and measurements across the sort of charity sector as well for recommendations of certain types of measurements. With regards to salaries, it all depends on what type of charity you are. If you're a charity that the main what you're doing is providing services but through employees, then your high proportion of your charitable income will be spent on salaries. Whereas if you're a charity that's like Guide Dogs for the Blind, training dogs and things like that, that's probably not a very, very good example, but if you're doing things that are not necessarily as personnel orientated, then your salary proportion of salary cost on salaries will be lower. I'm not sure that's given you any guidance.
Thank you for your very honest answer. This is quite controversial questions. Sorry for listening that, because I think that because sometimes you invest in the future is it's hard to see the return.
Yeah. The other, I think 2 years ago, EIKON ran a loss of 10%, I think. And it is very important as well that as part of a charity, you have to have a certain proportion of reserves. You have specific reserves set aside for cases where potentially you run into difficult circumstances, etc. And sometimes the decision was made, I think a year or 2 years ago, that there was an issue with regard reduction in funding for a particular area, but we had sufficient reserves. But we knew in a year or two, in 2 years' time, a big contract had been potentially was there for us to take, and rather than reducing staffing for that year and then having to bring them new people on again, we were identified that we could run a loss that particular year, which would be covered in our reserves, but there was a long-term goal. But sometimes in your reports, your annual reports, you need to identify these issues and have explanations for why you have them. Certain decisions are taken.
I also want to share that this CUKRUN, the CUKRUN organization, I look at their statement. It's mainly come from the government support, the grant. Their strategy is going to get some contribution for the individual runners. So they have set up this monthly contribution plan, also some plan to sell the merchandise, sell
Yeah.
the clothes, their own brand.
Yeah.
I think it's a same idea to be sustainable, to be a long term, not just rely on the government.
Yes. Yeah. No. It is there. There is sort of potential. Yeah, it's something that EIKON hasn't done, and we haven't made. I think charities are allowed to do financial investments as well, and there are certain charities. Well, some of the very big ones like some of the wildlife charities, the RSPB and RSPCA. They have a lot of merchandising which they sell, which is another income stream for them. But again, it's resources and having that initial commercial outlay to invest in that. If a millionaire is around the corner that you know of that is willing to offer us a couple of £100,000 to invest in some merchandising, let me know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nigel. Thank you. I'm conscious of time. So is there anyone for the last question? Okay, all right. So if there are no more questions, let's give a round of applause to Nigel.
I suggest everyone turn on the camera. So
Can I ask
on the camera
a question? Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nigel.
Would CUKRUN consider running for EIKON at all, or helping in an event?
Yeah.
Or
Let's organize to the Mercer half marathon to see if the people want to sign up for the team.
excellent. Wow, that's
How many
fantastic.
do you need?
What's the minimum number for a team?
14. Oh, wow.
What's the minimum number?
I don't know. I'll have to go on. I'm just looking on the website now. I don't know if there is a minimum. You can run individually, I think, but it's. Let me have a look. It's the fully closed route is set in glorious countryside and picturesque villages surrounding Woking and Guildford. Live music and supporters line the streets, making for a fantastical run and memorable experience. There's even a 2K distance for children's race as well.
You find out, don't worry. Don't worry.
I think that it's a case that you can probably, if I can put you in touch with Becky, who's our events organizer, I can send many details.
Yeah.
And if you contact her, I'm sure she'll be more than happy to sort of provide you a lot more information than I would have.
Yeah.
I'll sign up for the kids.
Excellent.
That would be great. Yeah, once you send me the information, I will just circulate it around the members.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your questions, which are very searching, and I had to sort of use my brain tonight.
I keep being cut off. Sorry. Oh gosh.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All the best, and thank you very much for your support.
Good night.
Thank you.